Hi, Taurus Sun and Rising. Welcome to your May 2022 Astro Update. It's Raina here. Wow. May looks like it's going to be quite a busy month, and we're coming from the eclipse in your sign on the last day of April, so that's a doozy because that energy of change is sweeping into May. And right off the bat, on the second of the month, Venus goes into Aries. So a lot of Aries energy. Of course, Aries is a sign before you. So some of those personal planets are going to be also in that sign. But we also have Chiron in Aries, and we have Jupiter going into Aries in May. So that Martian energy is strong, and Venus into Aries means that Venus is going into your 12th house on the second of the month. And this can be something that keeps love in a place that is kind of hidden off from the world. Why would somebody do that? Well, maybe they just don't want to let people know what they're up to because they're trying to see if they can make something work, and they don't want that input from other people. But sometimes it's because they're slinking around, sneaking around, and they're doing something in a covert way, maybe having an affair, being on the down low. and sometimes this can be like some kind of a spiritual love, meeting somebody and feeling like you've known them forever, like a soulmate type of situation. On the 10th of the month, Jupiter goes into this 12th house. So you've had both Jupiter and Venus, Mars actually too, but that's going to be later in the month, in the 11th house, and that is very social and very connected with groups of people and stuff like that. Well, the 12th house energy, when these planets go into Aries, it makes things a lot more solitary. So Jupiter in the 12th house, which will be happening through, this is a general forecast, so I'm just going by the actual transit of Jupiter into Aries. It's going to turn retrograde on July 28th and go back into Pisces on October 28th. So you're going to have Jupiter in Aries for several months, about 5 months before it goes back into your 11th house. And Jupiter in the 12th house can be very good for having kind of that divine protection. Everybody, I would say, has divine protection, but you might just have a little bit more of it. And you are lucky when you're doing things associated with spiritual pursuits. If you're interested in learning more about this transit in your 12th house, I don't know if I've put up the one for Taurus yet. I might not have. So just keep checking my channel, because I've been putting up videos for each sign about how the Jupiter transit into Aries might affect them. All right. And then on the same day, the 10th, Mercury goes retrograde at 4 degrees of Gemini. So this is on the front end of you, and this is going to be in the second house of earned income. So this can be a time when something financial may go awry or has the potential to do so. So make sure any kind of correspondence relating to money or any kind of checks that have to be mailed either on your end of things or that are coming towards you, that you're on top of it. Because if you kind of forget, then who knows, maybe you wouldn't even remember that you're supposed to get the check in the first place. And so if it goes to the dead letter office, then you are screwed. So don't do that. But there could be something that has to do with you thinking about how you make money. Let's see when Mercury goes direct. Mercury goes direct on the 3rd of June. And it does so in a late degree of Taurus. So it actually goes back into Taurus. And since that's the first house of the self, it's going to go back into your sign. So it might even be on the more, I don't know if we call it emotional and psychological level, Taurus. Second house can be your self-esteem, and the first house is your physical body. And the reason that this is important is that Taurus is ruled by Venus, so it's not unheard of for people who are connected to Venus to place too much importance on their appearance for whatever reason. And you may realize, especially since Uranus is going through your sign, that you don't need the approval of other people and that love is going to come to you regardless. I think that women are conditioned to believe this, that they have to be the most desirable one to get love in their lives. And that is, that's a very primitive belief. I think that everyone has somebody in their life that is meant for them. It's not something that is withheld from people. Since the second house can be self-esteem, you can realize this. You can, really think about how this matches up with what you've learned about yourself. And Uranus is more nonconformist, so it's not going to be as willing to go along with the program that has been conditioned into you about how you're supposed to look, especially if you have Taurus rising, because this is going to be your ruler. I mean, the sun, you can consider the sun sign your ruler too, but the ruler of the natal chart is your rising sign. And since the rising sign is the cusp of the first house of the self, including the body, that really directly relates to it. I have Taurus rising, and that was something that I really focused on when I was younger. And I know that even as people, especially women, age, they can go one of two routes. They can continue to keep trying to do that, or they can let that go. And you have a helper in Uranus because you may have, normally I think of Taurus as a very conventional sign in and of itself, where you will tend to follow the dictates of whatever is out there. Uranus is a rebellious disruptor, so it's going against the grain. Okay, so this can help you. And of course, that's just a broad brush for the sign of Taurus, because each sign has its own template, and so it's going to go along with certain rules. But certainly, if you are Sun in Taurus, and maybe you have Aquarius rising, or you have the Moon in Aquarius, you're going to be a lot more rebellious than what I'm saying. So, and even if you have Mars in Aries, you might be a lot different than what I'm saying. So obviously, I understand that. Okay, so Mercury retrogrades. Sometimes I've noticed. Sometimes they affect me. Sometimes they don't. I barely notice them. So I'm not going to make a big deal about it, but it is something to keep in mind. And then the next week we have a lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio, and it's important to realize that, as I stated at the beginning, you have the eclipse in Taurus that happened on the last day of April. So April goes out with a bang, but you can't just look at the date of April 30th and then think, oh, well, that's it. No, the eclipse season is upon us starting in April, and some would even say March, because sometimes these eclipses, maybe at the end of March or something like that. But the eclipses can also affect people before the actual date. So just in that time frame of maybe 90 days or what have you, including the pre-eclipse period, there can be this kind of either like a foreboding of something to come. We know something's about to drop. But anyway, on the 16th, we have a lunar eclipse at 25 degrees of Scorpio, and this is going to be in your opposite house, Taurus. Now, I'm going to explain something to you about when I said that, I think I just said that this depends on your personal chart. So I'll just repeat that because I'm not I'm not that great about being able to like give examples unless I'm using myself, because I get easily confused about these kinds of things. But my rising sign is 26 degrees of Taurus. I'm using the unequal house chart. So, it's not like nice and neat and 30 degrees each segment. And you can have 2 signs or whatever in each house. You don't have to just even have 1 sign in a house. In the cusp of my 7th house, which is called the descendant, is at 26 degrees of Scorpio. This lunar eclipse is at 25 degrees of Scorpio. So that means it's going to fall in my 6th house. Okay, so for some of you, this is not going to fall in the 7th house. Okay, but it is a later degree, so probably a lot of you will experience it there. And but just realize that if it isn't true for you, it can still affect you because, like, for instance, for me, it is going to be connected to that 7th house cusp, which can be public relations, and that could have something to do with your work, the service you're offering to others. So if it's close to that cusp of the 7th house and forms a conjunction, then you might see that you have more clients. And maybe you're working, you're having a breakthrough in your work that I'd like to think of the lunar eclipse as a breakthrough in some cases where you've been working hard. Sometimes you can work hard at something and it seems like there's no payoff. And that's very frustrating. And I'm talking about like if you work for yourself, because, if you work for somebody else, you may have work that's already predetermined and you're going to get a paycheck, if you just do that work. But for people who work for themselves, there's like this unknown factor. You don't know whether what you do is going to go into this black hole or whether it's going to actually be well received and, and all of that stuff. So for others, this is going to fall in the 7th house, and this is going to be a time of possible revelations. If you have a relationship where you don't trust that person, I wouldn't be surprised if you find out what they've been doing, because this is in Scorpio, baby. This is in Scorpio. Don't play. Scorpio is about the seedy underbelly. And, for the collective, this could really manifest in certain things coming out that had previously been hidden. And a lot of us out here have been waiting for these kinds of revelations to come out. Some people may be in denial and saying there's nothing to see here. but they might be the ones that have to see, maybe forced to see it. I always think of Pluto, and that's one of the rulers of Scorpio, along with Mars. But Pluto is the one to me that shakes somebody by the shoulder and said, look at this. You've got to believe this. And it's like the shadow self coming to the surface. Now, in this particular instance, this would be concerning a relationship in the 7th house. But the only reason that there is a shadow in the relationship is because there has already been a lot of negativity under the surface, festering, oozing. Remember, I talked about Venus being in your 12th house. That could be part of it. Now, let me run a scenario past you. Maybe you have suspected that your partner has been cheating, but you don't like to make a scene. You're very non-confrontational. Or you're intimidated by your partner in some way. You know, they always are gaslighting you and telling you you're crazy when you've mentioned it before, and you just don't want to go there anymore. So something comes about where somebody shows interest in you and you start having an affair because you're trying to make yourself feel better because your self-esteem is in the trash heap, okay? Now, sometimes it could be a situation where you're the one that gets discovered, even though that person is the one who is doing the dirt. Well, even if something like that were to happen, that person, I feel, would be exposed as well. Sometimes the very people who are accusing others of cheating are the ones doing it themselves. Or whatever, they're being sanctimonious about something, and they're the one who is doing it. But the scenario that I provided is a very unfortunate one because I don't recommend that people try to solve their problems by doing exactly what somebody else is doing. You know, that's just dysfunctional behavior that is taken to the next level. But I do understand that sometimes people may feel so negative about themselves that they're kind of in a weakened state, and then they do something because of that. And sometimes I feel like those kinds of affairs or something like that can make a person realize that they have worth. So it's nothing in life is black and white. And I wish that everybody could be open with their partner, and if they don't want to be in a relationship, not to be in one, because that's the best way of handling it. I'm just saying what these could be. So I just don't want people to think that I'm, condoning those kinds of behaviors. But yeah, so something could come out about a relationship. Can this adversely affect a solid relationship? I don't think so. There's nothing, if you have a solid relationship with somebody, even if it's not perfect, solid means that you both love each other and respect each other. A lunar eclipse can bring something to the surface, but who knows? Maybe it's more love that's flowing through. Maybe it isn't so much that you are alienated from your partner, but you're just distracted by something. And you've allowed that thing to come in between you and that person. Maybe it's just as simple as getting into a rut, watching TV all the time, instead of, doing things together and or just talking, and just kind of being in your separate worlds all the time. And then you realize it's like a wake-up call in the sense that I only have so much time left with this person. I really care about this person. I don't want to just keep, living with them like they're a piece of furniture. And maybe it enhances your love life, or your relationship life. I think that this can be good for public relations, putting somebody on the map who's been working, maybe toiling in obscurity. Seventh house is your popularity. That could be like an eclipse can be something comes about and you all of a sudden you're just off to the races. And I just think about even on YouTube, an astrologer that was so didn't seem like they had that many subscribers, and then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, started taking off, and now it probably has around 200,000. How do these things happen? I don't really know. But however they happen, you never know what's going to happen in life. That's what makes it so interesting. There's no guarantees. You can have one situation for many years and then all of a sudden things change. And so you just have to be open to it. Taurus is a sign that tends to value constancy over like uncertainty. But hopefully with this Uranus transit, you will embrace the idea of things happening for the better, even if they're sudden shifts. And then on the 20th, the sun goes into Gemini. And so this is your second house. And one thing to mention is the second house is the house that you rule. So you have a great affinity with this area of the money that you earn, your possessions, your self-esteem. These kinds of things are part of what you're all about, and the sun is here. So it really just enhances who you are in this lifetime. A couple of days after this, Mercury, which is still retrograding, is going back into your sign. So there it is. There's enhancing that. The sun is in Taurus's house, and then Mercury goes back into the sign of Taurus. Mercury in the first house retrograding, you might be just rethinking how you carry yourself, how you speak of yourself. And when I say speak of yourself to other people, maybe something happens that makes you aware of this. Somebody says, why do you keep beating yourself up? Why do you keep saying these things about yourself? I mean, I know for a fact with myself that when I hear people saying bad things about themselves, it makes me uncomfortable, really, because I know that whatever it is that they're saying was probably said to them when they were young, and they're just kind of repeating it like a robot. And and plus it's sad, to hear something like that. So whether, somebody's giving you this feedback that they notice this, that you're doing this, whatever, and it might give you that resolve, especially when Mercury goes direct at the beginning of on the 3rd of June, to really change doing that. Because then, sometimes I think people do that to seem self-effacing. But it doesn't come across that way. It comes across as more, just negative self-talk. And yeah, it's not something that you want to promote for yourself. On the 24th, Mars goes into Aries, so Mars is in that 12th house. You may be doing things behind the scenes, preparing for your solar return, and you don't want people to know. Mars can be sexy, it can be an affair happening, or, affair, or just like a romantic relationship, but behind the scenes, a fling, behind the scenes, not for the world to know. 12th house can be hidden enemies, so make sure that the people that you are confiding in, if you are confiding in anyone, that you know that they are trustworthy. And on the 28th, we have Venus going into Taurus. So that's nice because that's your ruler, and that's in your, it's your ruler in your sign too. And this is great for, in the first house, it's great for just attracting good experiences to you or good people having goodwill towards you, just across the board, positive vibes, and maybe even being seen as attractive by other people, regardless of how you actually look like. Although you may decide to gussy up, get a new haircut, do something like that when Venus is in the first house. On the 30th, we have a new moon at 9 degrees of Gemini in that second house of earned income. So that might be a time when some people are really deciding to do something else for money or add an income stream. But remember that Mercury is still retrograding, albeit in the first house now instead of the second house, but still in that retrograde cycle. So any kind of plans, ideas that you have, if you act on them, especially after Mercury goes direct, you might see that things gel easier. Trust your intuition above all else in these matters. And I thank you for listening, Taurus. I hope that this resonated. If you would like a personal reading, I am promoting my double readings because they're more substantial, they're longer, an hour of natal chart and analysis, an hour of transits for the next 12 months. So this is great for actual Taurus sun signs who are having their solar return and want to just get like a feel for what the next year is going to be like for them, as well as those people having their who have Taurus rising, because that's kind of like your new year as well when the sun crosses into that first house. You can find out more information at the link below. That reading is called a deep dive. I have other readings. Thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.